Greetings, brothers and sisters. My wife sent me this. I think I might have seen it before, a long time ago. Somebody said this video got old, but it was the reintroduction of wolves. In 1995, 14 wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone Park. No one expected the miracle that the wolves would bring. It started with the wolves hunting deer. This led to the rapid decreasing of deer population. The wolves' presence also made the deer avoid parts of the park where they were easy prey. Thanks to the deer's absence, those parts started to regenerate. Forest of aspen and willow trees started to flourish. That's when things really started to happen. With the trees and brushes came more berries and bugs. As soon as that happened, various bird species started moving in. With the increasing tree population, also another species was attracted. The beaver, previously extinct in the region, moved back. And the dams they built provided habitats for otters, muskrats, and reptiles. The wolves also killed coyotes. As a result of that, the numbers of the rabbits and mice grew, which meant more hawks, red foxes, badgers, and weasels in the park. Even the population of bald eagles and ravens rose. But that's where it really started getting interesting. The wolves changed the behavior of the rivers. With more balance between prey and predator, came the possibility for other species to thrive. There was less erosion because of increased vegetation, and the river's banks were stabilized. The channels narrowed. More pools were formed, and the rivers stayed more fixed in their course. So the wolves did not only transform the great ecosystem of the Yellowstone Park, they also changed the park's physical geography. So, kind of a beautiful, idea of when you remove something from nature, or you add something from nature, man-made type of a situation, right? So men came in and removed the wolves from nature because they're predators and they hunted their cattle. Like if you install things like fences, right, that changes the whole, country landscape. And of course, cities even, more so. But reintroducing a predator, which is seen as, bad. There was this guy a while back, and he was supposedly trying to turn wolves into vegans or vegetarians. He was trying to, breed the predator out of them, right? People want to see the world in their limited view. But I talked about this a while back, that when you remove they've been trying to remove the bully from the environment, right? And nobody likes the bully. Nobody likes the idea of a bully. But when they removed the bully, you saw, look at what's happening, right, in our culture right now. People have a problem with predatory type of situation, but sometimes, there are things that are out there that, when they might be unpleasant and nobody likes them, but they stop the, there's disorder without that hierarchical presence. There's another great story about these young elephants, and elephants, when they go into, they become pubescent, and they start leaking testosterone. Testosterone's literally pouring out of their, their ears and their eyes, and the elephants are just gushing testosterone when it becomes mating season. And there was no older elephants, so these young male elephants with all this testosterone started, one of them killed a rhino, stomped on a rhinoceros, right? Which, I would thought would be impossible. Rhinos have this almost bulletproof flesh, right? They're just really tough creatures. But these elephants are bigger, and they were killing all this stuff. They were running through villages, ransacking. They were called wild tuskers because they had all this testosterone. And, you can find that somewhere. And so what they did is reintroduce older male elephants into the environment. that were, bigger and more mature, and they helped decrease the testosterone that the younger males were producing, and everything calmed down. And so it's something for especially with this, you can say it also about the right wing too, removing there's this element where people think they can, change things based in their desires, their needs, but there's an order to the natural world, and people have to respect it. So I didn't put these in any particular order, but we'll just go through it here.
The best way to get something done, if it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to, anyway.
So I think I covered this before. I think I, found this in a speech, but it's nice to have the words. That's Jojo Magoo.
Well, today, Donald Trump had a very bad day in the United States Supreme Court at the very same hour when he was having a very bad day in a federal appeals court, which came 2 hours after he had a truly desperate day in the federal district court of the single most out-of-control Trump judge in America. We begin with Donald Trump's big loss in the United States Supreme Court before turning to what is likely to be an even more important loss in the 11th Circuit.
Look at this guy trying to be happy. I mean, these guys are so obsessed with Trump. It's embarrassing, right? Like, how are you not embarrassed, bro? And I'm not going to show you the hammer thing. I mean, I'll get this guy again with it. I'm not even going to show you that. But this, these clowns who are so obsessed with Trump, this is his lead story. He's not talking about Biden's accomplishments. He's not talking about what the Dems are doing. That's great. He's still obsessed with Trump, right? Trump is, his announcement was so weak. Right now, Trump is dead in the water. And something might come around. It's not going to change anything, whatever it is, right? There's a, small outside chance that something turns and Trump's elected, or the powers that be, the controllers favor Trump in some way. But other than that ain't happening, right? Other than some, political miracle, Trump looks just beaten. I thought Trump looked beaten in his last debate with Hillary. He looked like he gave up. Like, he wasn't fighting back. He looked like he gave up. And I was like, oh, this thing's over, right? He was told he was going to lose. And, and I was like, maybe I don't think he really ever wanted to be president. I think he was just doing it to, that's this guy, even said that. I mean, there's, that he was just doing it to bolster his street cred or whatever it was, right? And, he was like, gave up. He wasn't fighting like he did in the other debates. He just seemed kind of, like he did, low energy. But, these guys are obsessed with him. Like, this is all they talk about, right? This is all on MSNBC. I'm sure, this is how it played out.
Circuit Court of Appeals that could send Donald Trump on his way to being criminal.
What I mean by that is I'm going to show 3 videos on MSNBC that are now up on YouTube that all got recommended to me that deal with this, right?
Criminal defendant Donald Trump, accused of stealing government documents. Today, the United States Supreme Court simply refused to hear Donald Trump's final appeal of a court order requiring the Internal Revenue Service to actually follow the clearly written law that says the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee has the legal right to obtain a copy of anyone's tax returns.
They finally got his tax returns, like after so many years, right? Look at this guy. It's like Christmas in his pants, right? Just how lame are you, bro? This was the first video that got recommended to me.
We start with breaking news, years in the making. The Supreme Court rejecting Trump's bid to stop Congress from getting his tax returns and other financial records. For 3 years, Trump has been fighting battle after battle in the court system to prevent the House Ways and Means Committee from obtaining these documents.
And you got him, right? So you finally got his tax returns. It's like Christmas at MSNBC and CNN, I'm sure.
From obtaining these documents. And here it is. Take a look. The order from the United States Supreme Court
is denied.
A pending case is now closed. The court very blunt on Trump's stay request. It's denied. It's not signed. There's no dissents. The Treasury Department will hand over those tax returns. You know, Trump broke precedent by not disclosing his tax returns.
So the Supreme Court is completely compromised. All these right-wing people were so psyched when the Supreme Court reversed Roe v. Wade, but it cost the Republicans the midterms. They cost Trump any legitimate chance of questioning the results of the election, right? And, the Supreme Court, they're all part of it, right? I mean, Trump is it himself. But this is, again, what are they going to talk about? Like, I hope Trump goes to jail and then see what, I want to see what the news would look like. I mean, they'll probably be like, oh, there's a scandal in the prison, they're going to talk about him even after he dies. There'll be some Trump scandals. They just, they've gone full Trump and they can't go back. So that was from last night, those two reports. But they had to talk about it. Gumby Joe and his little pokey here.
Turning to politics, the Supreme Court has cleared the way for House Democrats finally to access Donald Trump's tax returns. The former president has fought for years to shield those records from the House Ways and Means Committee. The decision came in a brief one-page order that noted there were no dissenting votes. This means the House Ways and Means Committee, which has been seeking Trump's tax documents since 2019, can...
Okay, we get it. Nowhere. Let's see what these guys have to say.
John Meacham, one after another of Trump's spurious claims, whether it's about his taxes, whether...
They're bringing in these, various ghouls who are going to come in and comment. This guy's going to talk for a while. She's going to talk for a while.
I think it's important that commentators don't conflate those ideological decisions.
Goes on for 10 minutes.
You think about how embattled former President Trump is on many fronts. The Atlanta grand jury heard from Senator Lindsey Graham yesterday.
He's embattled.
In this hearing, make it very clear they're going to overturn what Judge Cannon did.
So, just put him in jail already, right? Like, just,
and any other defendant pre-indictment. And the only thing that the Trump lawyers could settle on is, well, he's a...
So this is all they're going to do. They're going to talk about Trump until there's no Trump left to talk about, right? Their obsession is way worse than anything else.
And finally, before you go, today is Joe Biden's 80th birthday. Do you think he should run for re-election?
I think he should. I think he's extremely capable. What he's been able to do in the last 2 years.
This guy, Skifty Skift, what a weird dude. What a weird, creepy, just a weird, creepy dude.
Is an unprecedented level of...
this guy's got some secrets. This guy's got some dark stuff hidden behind his, in his closet or whatever it is, right? He's a freak, this guy, right?
Accomplishment. If he wants to continue, I'm for him.
He's for him. He went after Trump like Trump is the worst person in the world. Joe Biden is just a Democratic version of Trump, which I've talked about before. But, he's clearly gone mentally, and these guys just won't admit it. It's just, it's become a plague of embarrassment, right? Some interesting headlines here. I wasn't sure if I'd put them in my other video from my other channel, but Jehovah's Witnesses, Sikhs, Muslims, new religious groups race to the Arctic. From a couple of places to Nome, they're coming. There was once a slow advance of religious groups in the far north has turned into a gallop to the high latitudes, starting around the 60th parallel. A circle around the Earth, just shy of the Arctic Circle and encompassing cities such as Fairbanks, Alaska, Yellowknife, and Canada's Northwest Territories. My voice, I've been sick, just in case I've talked about this in other videos. I'm mostly better, no reason to say anything. No reason to wish me well, just, it's fine. I'm much better than I was, and it's just by the time this video comes out, which will be I'm making this part the day before Thanksgiving, so I'll be better tomorrow. Although Lutherans, Anglicans, Catholics, and Russian Orthodox believers have been in the far north for centuries, The newcomers, ranging from independent Baptists to Baha'is, are drawn by growing populations and part of the climate change. As the North can be a lonely place, houses of worship can provide instant community. Last week, apparently these religious groups are all taking hold in the North Pole. I thought the story would be more interesting, like there was something going on apocalyptically. But an Israeli general said aliens are real, but avoiding humanity. That checks out. If aliens are out there, I would absolutely recommend that they avoid the Earth and all of its issues for now.
Aliens exist and President Trump knows about it. That's according to Israel's former space security chief. In an interview with an Israeli newspaper, he said the aliens have been waiting until today for humanity to develop and reach a stage where we will understand in general what space and spaceships are. NBC News chief global
Aliens were here long before. The evidence is overwhelming, but whatever. I've discussed this in many videos.
correspondent Bill Neely explains this one.
Hi, Alison. Well, this is quite a story, and it comes from the man who headed Israel's space security program for nearly 30 years. Chaim Eshed is making the extraordinary claim that the United States and Israel have been in contact with a group of aliens for years.
Why Israel? Okay, the United States is the most powerful country with the biggest military, so I could understand the United States. Why Israel and the United States and not other countries? Kind of bizarre claim, but whatever.
Immigrants, but extraterrestrials. He has called them the Galactic Federation of Aliens, and he says President Trump is aware of the existence of these aliens and had been on the verge of revealing their secrets, he claims, but was asked not to do so by the Federation in order to prevent what he calls mass hysteria.
Trump's held back on us.
Well, the retired general says the US and Israel have kept it from the public because, quotes, humanity isn't ready and the aliens don't want to reveal themselves until humanity can evolve, he says, and understand what space really is. Well, the good news
is he talking about the firmament?
Is that he claims an agreement has been reached between the US government and the aliens, a contract to do experiments here. There's also, he says, a secret underground base on Mars where there are
there's definitely the experiments.
American and alien representatives. Now, this former head of a branch of Israel's defense ministry is 87. He was very well respected, at least until now.
Till now he's he's outed himself.
And he said all this in an interview with an Israeli newspaper in Hebrew, but it's really taken off after parts of it were published in English by the Jerusalem Post today. He says he's come forward now in the hope that his news will be accepted as true. He notes that if he'd made these claims 5 years ago, he would have been hospitalized, but now he says, I've got nothing to lose.
That's what he thinks, right?
So far, President Trump has not tweeted about this, though remember a year ago, he did set up the Space Force as the fifth branch of the U.S. Armed Forces.
Baphomet, it looks like Baphomet when it's turned upside down.
Armed Forces. Well, we did ask the White House, the Department of Defense, and Israeli officials to comment. So far, they have not responded to the end.
Oh, Space Force. So I don't want to make a big thing about aliens here. I talk about it quite often. But either there is life on other planets or there's not. Now, there's religious people. Religions don't want you to believe that there's some higher developed beings because it would defeat their whole argument, right? That they are, the sole connector between you and God, and that there's a past where there were higher developed beings that were here, more advanced in various ways on the planet. So that's why they've excluded that reality. But let's say there's no aliens. Okay, there's nothing. It's just the beginning of the universe, and we're the tops, right? We've evolved and far past anything else that exists on any other planet. If that's the case, then that's the case. But the other way, if there is aliens and there is, higher developed technological and advanced life forms, and I'm talking about beyond the physical, where you have etheric life forms. Your soul is, could be considered almost an alien presence. I mean, it is, because it exists. It can exist in this universe etherically. There's groups of souls on different planets that are there that aren't in a body, right? So that's a whole different form of life. And so if there is a sort of, a galactic federation or some, some organized, whatever, throughout these various planets throughout the universe, they didn't just discover Earth, right? They didn't just say, hey, there's a planet out there and there's some crazy MFers out there. Let's stay away from it. Or let's go help them, or let's go take it over. They've known about the Earth because they've been here before. And they're going to have portals and this whole thing I'm going to cover here. My wife sending me something about FIFA, and they had a whole portal thing. So it ties into this. I'm going to find that and put that at the end of this video probably, or, tomorrow's or 2 days from now. Something, I don't know. We'll see how this all plays out. But anyways, they just didn't discover Earth. And they just didn't just, contact governments here. They've been here all along. And that would be, telling the truth. They've been either here physically on this planet running things, or they've been managing things, or they've come and gone, or whatever it is, right? But they've been here before. And there's a vast history, but the religions, don't want you to know that, because they would diminish their power. It would obliterate people's belief in the organized religions. But anyways, let's get back to it.
The reason why I'm announcing that I'm running for president is I want the FCC to look at my money. If the FCC was looking at my money, there had been a possibility that Adidas wouldn't have went into JP Morgan and froze my account and put a $75 million hold on 4 different accounts. I went from being a multi-billionaire to not being able to use my Apple Pay for
Apple also has got rid of their tweeter. They deleted all their tweets.
Nights ago, I couldn't use my Apple.
CBS is back though, so he's saying he can't use his Apple Pay, but Apple has left Twitter, but CBS is back.
Apple Pay 4 nights ago, I couldn't use my Apple Pay because somehow Adidas was able to legally go in and freeze my money. And when I see this, I think, well, if this could happen to me, this could happen to other Americans. And for what? This can happen to an American that didn't even steal anything, that didn't even hurt anyone. This could just happen to you for saying the wrong idea out loud, for expressing yourself in America.
Yeah, it can. Yeah, it can. Like, it's like they're turning off your microchip. That was the idea. They would chip you, and everything that you owned, everything that you were was on that chip, and they wanted to get rid of you, ban you from society. They would turn off your chip, and you were just done as a person. They would deperson you. That was their goal. And, this is similar. They didn't get the chip in people, but they're basically taking away everything that he has, and now he can't use his Apple Pay, right?
We're all on medication right now. Did you use toothpaste with fluoride today? It blocks your pineal gland. And they put children on it, and we put our kids on it. It's inside the deodorants that we use. It's all these things to create like a disconnect to God, to serve that. It's like, are you serving man? Or are you serving the one and only master?
Kanye bringing it.
We're all on.
Once upon a time in medieval Calabasas.
So one of my viewers sent me this. This is Khloe Kardashian, more commonly known, at least by me, as the big one, because one day I saw her with her sisters, and she's a whole head taller and quite substantially larger than the rest of them. She's got the Freemasonic floor here, and looks like she's sporting morning wood. But there's a commercial for her sister's crappy supplements. But I called her the big one, and then, with nothing to do with me, it later was revealed by her sister and her when she said this.
So, you guys make fun of me for having a bigger vagina than most.
There lived a beautiful princess named Chloe, who was cursed with a lifetime of sleeplessness. Luckily, a good fairy named Courtney brought her a magical formulation called Lemmy Sleep, made with melatonin, magnesium, and calming botanicals.
I don't know if there's any lower vibrational celebrities out there. Saw a weird video by Tommy Lee. I can't show it here. It's on Instagram. It's just demonic and creepy. But, still, I think these Babylonian hoes, this coven of witches is maybe the lowest vibrational celebrity group out there. And so why would you want to get supplements from them, right?
At long last, Chloe slept like never before and lived happily ever after.
So that was pretty painful. And I think that sister is kind of the dark one. Like she's the most negative of the whatever. So I mentioned Tucker Carlson earlier. I thought I must have not heard that when I was editing, and that's not good, but whatever. Or maybe I mentioned him on my other video. I think that's what it was. And what it was is I watched, I'll explain it here. But there was this article by Huffington Post, and then they were going after Tucker Carlson for being hateful, and that he exposed something, and then somebody else sent me the New York Post covering what Tucker Carlson was talking about. I'm in the editing process. I took a long nap. I made the part you just watched this morning, went to bed. I think I say all that here. But then I, came back around. That's how COVID is. And there was this new development, so I want to cover that here. So today is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I got up. I did a long voiceover narrative for, the reintroduction of Black Dynamite on my Apocalypse Now. Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies. And then I made lunch, and I ate with my wife, and I got really tired, and I laid down. It's probably 12:30, 1 o'clock, and I woke up, it was 4. And I was like forcing myself out of sleep. Like I just couldn't, I didn't want to go down that road where I was lifeless and just laying there sleeping all day. And it was really nice outside, and I have to get some work done. And there's a big thing I'm doing. We're trying to get the cows trained to go into a trailer and all this stuff. But anyway, so it's dinner time, and my wife's going to go pick something up, and we're going to, we went out for a little walk, got the dog some exercise. So that's the, way it's going with the COVID. It's never just clean. Like you have these ups and downs. I feel pretty good right now. My wife says I look a little pale though, but she's, it's just mostly sinus for her at this point. But anyways, one of my viewers sent me this, I think. I don't know who did, but I was covering this and I mentioned Tucker Carlson did a thing on it, right? I'll find that for you in a second. But here it is. It says, Balenciaga under fire for creepy ads of kids with bondage outfits. And you can see, like, these outfits. Look at this thing. This kid's holding a bear wearing this, right? This, innocent looking, I mean, what parent would allow that anyway? Unless the parent's not there. And, this other creepy, S&M kind of stuff. It'd be great if they didn't have here's that one. I mean, look, it's got all, just creepy, right? And there's the rabbit. I mean, it's just all this creepy stuff. And they were, people on Twitter went after them. Tucker Carlson talked about this. And they don't want to admit to it, the people on the left, because that makes the QBs and people in the truth community right. And that makes their whole worldview collapse. So they don't want to admit to any of these things being fake or any of these things being real. But here's the image, and it says all this creepy stuff here, right? All these chains, and this is all inappropriate stuff for kids. And in one of the ads, which Tucker Carlson pointed out, it might be this one, but there's this, here's a tweet here, this stuff here. So it's going around. But this ad here, this tweet, This part right here is, something to do, like, they looked into it, and it's some law, court order to do with, like child pornography or, something to do with, children abuse, right? And they put that, on this table. So it would be, why would they do that, right? And so Tucker Carlson made a video including this, and it had to do with that thing that happened in Colorado, all that stuff. So I saw this on Huffington Post. Now, Huffington Post is a place I've gone for a while. It's where it's like the CIA. I thought of it as the CIA sort of web news. It's where they would, like, whatever. They would push their agenda and whatever, psychological psyops and things. And now it's more liberal, whatever, more, it is still that, but also, just crazy pro Joe Biden, Democratic. We're completely right. We can never be wrong. The right is evil. It's the worst, way worse than CNN or MSNBC. And they posted this: hateful. Critics rip Tucker Carlson's response to LGBTQ nightclub shooting. The Fox News personality comments about violence and cruelty following the Colorado Springs shooting rang very hollow for many online. Many online, but not the majority. They make it sound like they put a few tweets in there that the majority of people felt this way. And the majority of people shouldn't if they did, because it's, he brought up this Balenciaga thing, right? I woke up and I saw this yesterday, and my wife was just waking up, and we had, the puppers, and I started to play it, and my wife said, turn it up, because she was, she wanted to hear it. But, what it mostly was about, now Tucker Carlson, is part of the mainstream media. Like, he's not a truther. But he did make one big step. Like, he's the best of the worst, right? He's the best of all these people. And, I don't know what is, whatever. Like there's parts where you're like, oh, like he's just part of it. Like, he'll just, he'll be too right wing, or he'll just, he'll come up with a conclusion that doesn't make any sense based in truth or stuff. But he did one thing, and I covered this. Like, I found an old clip. It was this guy, Adam versus the Man. He was I don't know if the guy still has a presence on the internet, but he saw Tucker Carlson at an event. This is years and years ago. And he asked Tucker Carlson about the big event in 2001 and it being, part of like an inside job. And Tucker Carlson said, come on, come on, let's it's conspiracy theory, right? He was like, when he gets that sort of whiny voice. But he later came back and, I don't know. I know that there's been some talk of him or people on his show watching some of the stuff I do, which is whatever it is. I don't know if he saw my thing or somebody else posted something, but he apologized for that. And, not because I had anything to do with it, but because it was right. That's, a big step for him, right? Because he's admitting that that is now a possibility. That with everything that's gone on, he said, how can I not believe that that's a possibility? So that's a big movement from somebody who dismissed so-called conspiracy theories about that big event and now has acknowledged its possibility. And so, for that and some of the stuff he covers, like some of it's great, some of it's good, some of it's like head scratching, some of it's just Fox News propaganda stuff, right? But what this video is about is thought crime. That, that you are all the internet censorship, right? And how there's all these people, this woman here is saying something we've heard over and over again. Conspiracy theories made the event that just happened in Colorado Spring happen, right? That conspiracy theories and people posting things on the internet is driving these events. But we kind of know now, this is from a couple days ago. Now this is, I'm editing this on Thanksgiving. And so we know this now with revelations about the guy's crazy dad and his home life and all these things, and he's non-binary. He's not some crazy right-wing conspiracy theorist that they tried to paint the guy as, right? But they make people posting things outside the main story the biggest problem. That's what this woman's saying. That's what CNN's been saying for a while, MSNBC, Joe Biden. They had that disinformation czar, whatever it was, truth czar. And so you know, that when there's real problems going on, they'd want to, you know, contain people's ability to express themselves and fact check the official story. This is what they were talking about with Kyrie Irving, right? They're real, you know, they're really intense about censoring all of us and anybody who's outside of the mainstream story. But Tucker Carlson brought this thing up about Balenciaga. And this means Huffington Post saw this, right? They saw this part of the piece, right? And Tucker Carlson goes on to show you what that piece of paper says and all this stuff. Like, they looked into it and they found it had something to do with a court ruling. But this is what Huffington Post chose to focus on, right? Tucker Carlson's takes on the whole thing, which weren't, to me, offensive. But they ignored the biggest piece to this, the biggest piece to what he's presenting. Whether they like him or not, it's the, you know, it's the thing that's going to leave, you know, it's the zinger, right? It's the, you know, it's the big reveal in his, whatever his video is. Like, everybody who has a news story, you have the big, you know, reveal when you cover something like this, right? But the worst thing is something Tucker Carlson presented. But they'll never admit he's right. They'll never admit the right is right. They'll never admit they're wrong. They'll never give in to that. There's people at the top of the system that are creepy MNFers that push stuff like this. And, you know, innocent children being put in sexualized position. This is a form of sexual abuse. And they simply won't do it, right? They simply won't admit to it. Even though, you know, the creepy rabbit stuff, I mean, all of this stuff, it's creepy. It's really creepy. These little girls put in this, you know, look at this thing. All of it is really, you know, creepy on all levels. And they shouldn't be doing this, right? They shouldn't put this up there. It's the worst thing. It's worse than what Kyrie Irving did, certainly. It's worse than all the things they're trying to censor. And that was Tucker Carlson's point, that the left was trying to censor this. They were trying to censor, you know, people who had legitimate opinions that were based in some, you know, reasonable ideology and facts and, you know, whatever it is, you know, pseudo-facts or whatever it might be. I mean, everything's pseudo-facts, everything's subjective, almost everything. And so things are being posted on the internet, and the left is trying to get rid of that. And they're going after Elon Musk or anybody who allows this stuff on social media, the things they're talking about here, and they're more upset about what Tucker Carlson was saying, and they actually are confirming what he's saying, that they are more concerned with the differences of opinions about things that don't matter all that much in terms of, you know, all of it, right? And now it's come out that this guy who was the villain in this story in Colorado Springs is, you know, non-binary, and that's a whole nother development. They didn't, you know, they didn't even consider that in this report, that he was some part of some right-wing, you know, these guys they roll out, the right-wing, you know, guys who supposedly write manifestos, and he was listening to hate speech, and it was, now the story is something else, right? And so their, you know, their take on it was this stuff that Tucker Carlson and other people believe is worse than a corporation posting this and exploiting children. And then there was this Tucker Carlson segment torched after guest's grotesque take on the Club Q shooting. And they showed this little clip.
Right. I mean, it shouldn't have to be said. But what is anti-LGBTQ that these people need to understand, and what is putting our community in great danger, is, you know, claiming that all of us support this and just associating all of us with this.
So she is the guest is a part of the LGBTQ, and she has a grotesque take, according to Huffington Post. And this is a day after this other thing with Balenciaga starting to get run. And you think Huffington Post would admit that they were wrong. They missed the big story here, that Balenciaga thing and protecting children is the main thing. But the liberals never do this. And the right wing, you know, they used to be worse than the left. They had the power, and they were just a-holes, you know, boop, boop. They were just, you know, they were brutal. But now it's the left, and they're just blinded by their hatred of Trump and the right and the truthers and all people who disagree with the official story. But this woman started a group called Gays Against Groomers, which, well, let's watch the end of this thing here.
saying that groomer is an anti-LGBTQ slur. That is doing irreparable damage to us as a whole, and it's putting a really large target on our backs. And unfortunately, the tragedy that happened in Colorado Springs the other night, it was expected and predictable. We all within Gays Against Groomers saw this coming from a mile away. Yeah. And sadly, I don't think it's going to stop until we end this evil agenda that is attacking children.
And so groomer is a pre-existing word, right? I have a master's degree in counseling, and I worked in 2 different treatment centers before and after I got my master's with a type of psychological program for sex offenders called Pathways, and they had an assault cycle. So this is my version of an assault cycle. I call this a trauma cycle, and I made this when I wrote my book about transforming abuse and how to deal with being traumatized and having some sort of like a spiritual venom injected into your system. An assault cycle is, somebody who's an offender, and it could be any number of ways of looking at it, but for the specific program I was working in, it was for sex offenders. And they would go through a process, a series of steps inside themselves that would create the offense, right? Another version of it that would be more understandable is like somebody who's an alcoholic. And so they wake up every day hungover, and, they wake up with the effects of alcohol addiction, right? And they hate their job, and they hate their family. Everyone's down on them. They're calling him a loser. His wife calls him a loser. The guy, goes to a miserable job he hates, and he's just can't even get through the day. He's got to sneak a drink at lunch or whatever it is, right? There's a series of steps you go through emotionally to do something bad, right? Same thing with people who self-abuse. But this was specifically about sex offenders and the cycle they would go through. And the idea here was that at each one of these steps, each one of these stages, and we'll go through them, and I want to talk, specifically about grooming. That's why I'm showing you this, but it's a part of it. They would recognize they are doing these behaviors. They would list the behaviors when they were in their victim stance or when they were in any of the power and control phase. They would, their thoughts, their feelings, they'd feel anger, or they'd feel fear or whatever. And they'd recognize which stage they were in the cycle, and they develop the ability to exit the cycle, to cope in some way, to recognize they were in this cycle and find ways, develop strategies. And there were strategies in the program itself, and the counselor would help the person. It was specific to each person to leave the cycle and, not complete the cycle, right? To break the cycle. And so I modified this, but this is, we'll go through it, and I'll show you, what the original assault cycle was, because we want to talk about grooming here. And so at the center of the cycle was a trauma. Usually the person had been sexually abused themselves, right? And they had been victimized. And it would lead to the first stage, which was victim stance and poor me. And that feeling of being a victim, that feeling of being victimized and feeling, like you're owed something, or the world's against you, and it gives you. This is where the person gives himself permission to do something bad to somebody else because something bad was done to them, right? Every abuser is a victim, and every victim's a potential abuser. Every victim has an abuser inside them, and I'll come back to that in a moment. And so then they would want to have a desire for pleasure to cover up the pain. And that's for most people, like, someone who uses drugs or alcohol. You feel bad. You're suffering pain, emotional or whatever it is. And you want pleasure. Like, that's how human beings think about things, especially in the modern day, American system. That you have, you have pain, so you try to get pleasure, right? You want something pleasurable to take away the pain, distract you from the pain, especially when it's psychological and traumatic. You don't want to think about it. You just want to feel good. You feel bad, so how can you feel good? And for a sex offender, it's doing to somebody else what was done to them, right? Because they've been sexualized. A lot of these kids who I worked with, some of the clients I had when I was, when I worked as a clinician, when I had my master's degree, they would say in therapy, like if they were sexually abused at 5 years old, they would pursue 5-year-old victims, right? Like it's like some kind of weird hardwired, that's when they were sexualized themselves, and that's who they were attracted to. They were attracted to 5-year-olds. And so then it would come to power and control. And with every victim, with every person who's been victimized, they see themselves as weak and they see the abuser as strong. And the abuser now exists inside of them, right? This was some of the stuff that I, that I expanded on, that I, through my understanding of the Sahaj Marg system and samskaras and energetic poison, etheric poison. And it's like you get this trauma injected into your system when you experience some sort of abuse. And it could be somebody just like bullying you to such an extent that it's like, traumatic or whatever it is, right? But now you have that bully inside you. You have a reference point because you've experienced it, right? Anything that you have is a memory, anything that you've seen, like you're being trained how to do things all the time because people are copycats, right? One of the ways that we learn, especially when we're young kids, but it's throughout our life, is we copy other people's behaviors. Let's say I want to learn to do something on my farm. And so I go to YouTube and I, search for somebody. Like I was looking into growing sugarcane, right? And so, I found this farmer, who has a, homesteader who grows sugarcane. I watched his videos and, maybe I'd modify some of the things he's done or, the way he does it. But for the most part, I would copy the way, if I like what the person has to say and, they make sense, I'll, it's like you follow somebody else's recipe, right? You go look up a recipe or you go watch a video of somebody cooking something and you copy their behaviors, right? You don't know how to do something, you watch somebody else do it, and then you learn how to do it that way. And so when a person's sexually abused, the abuser's teaching them a behavior. And now that's in their system. And it has a lot of emotional and psychological ramifications. And in this case, it is, one where the victim now is in the power and control phase. They started here feeling like a victim. They wanted some pleasure, and so how are they going to get the pleasure? Well, they got to assume the position of the person in charge, the power person. They want to be the powerful one, right? They want to be the abuser, and the abuser's inside them. They have a version, it's more than just a memory of the abuser inside of them that exists. So now they have both the victim that they are as a child, and then as they go older, when they, let's say they were victimized when they're 5, and then they get, to the age, let's say they were abused by their cousin or something who was 12. I mean, it's a lot of times, it's a weird thing, because there was lots of kids in foster homes. They were like a 12-year-old was put in with a 5-year-old. And, they would almost always, like, they'd take 2 kids from 2 different families and put them in a foster house, and they'd have like bunk beds or something, and they put a 5-year-old in with a 12-year-old, and the 12-year-old would abuse the 5-year-old. It would happen like all the time. Like all these kids that they had these files of their history, and so many of them, in both treatment centers I worked in, there would be an intake folder. And when I worked as a counselor, like a person in the milieu, and that in that way you're acting like, it's not a family, but it's not a prison. It's somewhere between those things, right? And you have counselors working with the kids as they, do their homework and participate in activities. And then later on, I got a master's degree where I was a clinician, where I was, part of the therapeutic. I was I had a caseload of kids, and I was their therapist, right? I was their counselor. And so they would have these intake files. And in both places, these kids often ended up in foster homes, and either they were 12 and they offended somebody, and that's how they got into the system, or they were 5, or it happened, to them when they were 5, and then later on they went back to foster care when they were 12, and they, or something like a group home or something. They were taken out of their family's home, and the family was a mess. It wasn't like their family was great. There was reasons why they were yanked out of their family, but they were placed in, a foster care or something kind of, temporary holding facility, and they were put in with a young kid, a 12-year-old, or, sometimes it'd be a little bit older, but oftentimes it was 5 and 12. It was the weirdest thing. Like, I kept on seeing it. Like, it was this pattern. I mean, I would almost say it was purposeful, but it was different states, right? Each state had their own criteria. Like, these kids all came from different parts of the country, different cities, different, they all had their different, foster care system. It's not a national system, but, it was just this universal issue where young kids were put in with older kids, and mostly it was 5 and 12-year-olds, and the 12-year-old would sexually offend the 5-year-old, and then the 5-year-old would go on to, become a predator themselves, right? It was, this like weird, bizarre cycle that seemed completely unnecessary. So this is, not the assault cycle, but it's another cyclical behavior, right? A kid's offended at 5, and so they get to 12 years old themselves, and now they're the age of the kid that abused them, the person that abused them, or, whatever it is. They're, one of the family members or something or whatever. It doesn't have to be like, they get old enough now where they can assume that role. And so that's how they take their power back, because they're no longer the victim. They're the ones in charge. They're the abuser. And so then there's fantasy and planning. And that's when they start having fantasies about doing what they're going to do, right? And they start having, like a physical, sexual reaction in their bodies. And, and it becomes like how you're going to set this up. And that's where the grooming comes in, right? Grooming is, there's a definition of grooming, which is an action by a pedophile of preparing a child for a meeting, especially via the internet chat room, with the intention of committing a sexual offense. So it's important to know that this word pre-existed whatever controversy, like within the realm of, sex offending. Grooming is a known entity. Grooming is a term that's used by counselors and patients who are, trying to, fix this problem for people. It's a known, or within like police, like, there's, and like there's various ways of grooming, right? There's a way that, like, say, like a skilled craftsman is grooming their apprentice or something, right? Somebody's grooming somebody for, to fill a role. It's like a coaching. It could be a positive thing. But in this scenario, what it is the sex offender sets up a series of events. It sets up the environment and the circumstances, and manipulates, the circumstance, like Michael Jackson getting the kids away from their parents, right? And then they might play a tickle game, and then they might, and each time there's more and more invasive type of body contact, right? So like that's, it's a series of steps, each one a little bit more intense, and then eventually leading to the offense itself. And so here's a good example of grooming. I'm in the editing process of this, and I thought I'd give you a really good, clear example of it. So let's say there's a teenage boy, and he has some deviant sexual attraction to children, and he maybe has like a stepbrother or something like this who's like 8 or something, and he's 15, and the kid wants to groom his stepbrother, and he's been pretty mean to his stepbrother for a long time. And the stepbrother, looks up to him and wants, is it like, a young kid looks up to their older brother, whatever it is. Or it could be his, biological brother. Let's just go with stepbrother because, this is often something that happens. And so the 15-year-old says, hey, you want to play some video games? And the 8-year-old's really psyched about doing that, right? And so the 15-year-old plays video games that are not age appropriate, that are mature, X-rated games. Maybe there's sexual stuff going on. And he doesn't start off with that. Like he plays, regular video game, but then they go to more graphic video games because that's how grooming works. It gets more and more invasive, right? More and more inappropriate. It starts off being appropriate or, normal behavior, then becomes more and more deviant. And so then he gets his stepbrother, his younger stepbrother, to play games that the kid's not allowed to play. And then he might say something like, oh, you did this thing, like almost like blackmail to manipulate him, that he'll tell the parents, that he's playing these inappropriate games and they'll be mad at him, right? That he's, that he's, done something that that he's not supposed to do, right? That's how they get you, like, to use drugs, or like, it's like drug dealers will give you free drugs to get you hooked, right, or whatever. And, and they'll give you some, like smoke pot with you, and then next thing you know, you're doing fentanyl, right? And that's all grooming behavior. That's how, grooming works. So he gets the kid to play these sexualized games, and then there's some, less invasive touching that happens. And slowly, through the grooming process, he commits the offense, right? Whatever it is. It's a predetermined goal. And where the young kid thinks he's just hanging out with his older stepbrother, the stepbrother has this insidious plan, right? This grooming plan to commit a sexual offense. And he, it's manipulated, and it's staged, and it's scripted, and in a way, it's pre-planned, right? You would say that, let's say a man wants to have sex with a woman, he takes her on dates, and, he finds out what she likes, brings her to the restaurant she likes, and, gives her compliments, gets her drunk, whatever it is, right? And, doing things that will increase his chances of her consensually agreeing to have sex, right? So, it's all, there's various layers of and levels of grooming behaviors, right? Some of them are, more socially acceptable. Some of them are, I guess, good when there's a, like a master apprentice type of a situation where there's someone's being prepared, and, the person who's doing the grooming is actually giving something, is, imparting something of value to the person. But in the world of sexual offense, it's just, all negative. There's nothing good about it. Grooming is evil, it's twisted, it's sick. And other than the offense itself, it's the worst part of the assault cycle. And for any group to come in and say, well, you guys can't use that term anymore because we're feeling offended, is just ridiculous, right? Like, it's more important than your feelings. This is an important tool because these stages, these steps in the assault cycle, there's ways for people to recognize these behaviors. Like, for example, if, let's say there's a 17-year-old boy and he offended his 10-year-old sister, and they go through treatment, and the boy learns how to, each one of these stages in the assault cycle, you're supposed to learn to exit, right? You're supposed to learn strategies to recognize, oh, I'm in this stage of this assault cycle, and learn to exit the assault cycle, right? Like, if somebody's an addict, it would work, in a similar way. If you drew up something, your cycle that you go through in terms of your, your addictive cycle. And in this treatment program, the kids were supposed to learn to recognize, oh, they're in this stage of their cycle, and then they would have strategies to exit the cycle. Some of them were built into the program, and some, the counselor, who was, me in this case, would work with a kid to help them discover strategies so that they wouldn't commit the offense again. And then the family, because if the kid was going to return to the family, they had to know the whole assault cycle. They had to recognize the behaviors, and they had to recognize if grooming was going on. I worked in the milieu. We worked in the cottages of these places, these treatment centers. The people who worked there when I was a clinician, and as a clinician, we had to make sure they would recognize when these clients, it was 10 to 14-year-old boys in the first place I worked, and then teenage sex offenders, and they were all victims and they were all abusers, so they all had the potential to be a victim or an offender. And so they would groom each other. And they would use grooming behaviors to manipulate to get other things. And we were supposed to call them out on their grooming behaviors because it's a horrible, manipulative way to go through life where you have a hidden agenda and you're pretending to, be, in a relationship with somebody, whatever that relationship is. I mean, some sort of, like a organic relationship, but you're manipulating that person in the relationship to gain some sort of an outcome, right? People are very manipulative in our society. There's lots of grooming that happens, right? Good example of this is in the show Breaking Bad, where the Aaron, whatever his name is, the young guy is, I guess the other character was called Walter White, right? Is that what it was? And at the end, it's like the final season, and Jesse, I think the character is, and Jesse was like, will you stop playing me and working me? You want something, just tell me what you want. Stop manipulating, because he was so manipulative, right? He was so, strategizing, and so he was grooming people throughout the thing. And Jesse's like, just stop manipulating. Just admit admit you're doing this for yourself, and tell me what you want from me. Don't try to coerce me into, con me into doing something that like you're making it sound like I should do it for myself, but I'm really doing it for you, right? And so that's like grooming behaviors. And so if somebody's engaged in grooming behaviors, people need to be able to call it out, either publicly or in the relationship, or go to authority figures. And if you say, well, that's a slur, you no longer can use that term. That's been a part of this, the world of dealing with sex offenders. That's unbelievably selfish. And just because a group of people is saying, oh, this hurts our feelings. Well, that's don't groom people. Don't be a part of that, right? I mean, don't, it's the behavior has to go. And if you're doing the behavior, then stop doing the behavior. Grooming is, in terms of the dark side of what I'm talking about here, is like an evil behavior. It's the manipulative, gross, Gollum-like part where the person plans the acting out, which is the sexual abuse. And after they're done with that, they go into negative guilt and shame and low self-esteem, which kicks them into the poor me victim stance. So they feel, selfish guilt, like they're worried about getting caught, and they feel like a piece of crap. And so that kicks them back into this thing here, and the cycle begins again. And so you have these people, these gay people, who don't want to be associated with grooming predators, right? People who, the grooming behavior label. This is what this woman's doing here, right? And she's condemning the grooming behaviors and these predatory behaviors, right? There's a difference between a gay person who is attracted to same-sex adults, right? People who are in an appropriate legal age group, and people who are attracted to kids, right? It's two different things. And so this, organization wants to make this distinction, and there's other factions of the gay community that are pushing for the, the making grooming an appropriate behavior. I don't know what the other, valid explanation would be. And so Tuffington Post's take was that Tucker Carlson's segment torched after guest's grotesque take on this event in Colorado. In this one, hateful critics ripped Tucker Carlson's response to LGBTQ, because, this thing, right? The event. But this is what Tucker Carlson pointed out, that you're not concerned about this, and that's what we see, right? And I'm not a Tucker Carlson person or a right-wing person or a QB, but I know more than probably anybody because I worked in this field, right? I had, years of working in this field, working against abuse and these types of things, right, as a professional. And this is a form of sexual abuse. You're sexualizing children with all this crap, right? Innocent children that don't know what this is all about. Why in the world would you ever give a child this thing to play with, to hold, associate, creepy, deviant sexual behaviors in an ad for your company? And the sick thing is, like, I don't even know who Valencia is, right? Like, I kind of heard of them. Like, if you ask me, it's Valencia. I was calling it Valencia. It's Valencia, right? And I'm not even sure what they are. Like they're a clothing company, obviously, or something. But I'm not, I don't know. And most of you probably never bought anything from them. And so you're not their customer base. The people, the Hollywood, the rich people, the Kardashians, these fashion-oriented people, they don't care about this. They probably think this is funny. They don't think it's that bad. They don't care about the trolls and the things. And, Balenciaga isn't going to apologize, isn't going to, they're not going to be canceled. No big corporation's going to, say, we're not letting you advertise with us, you creepy MNFers. But the worst thing is sexual abuse, right, of children. It's probably the worst thing because that wrecks kids' lives. It destroys their whole lives. It's, it's probably worse than child murder because you damage the kid for the rest of their life, right? And so these MNFers, and then Huffington Post, not able to admit they're wrong, not able to admit that Tucker Carlson had something that was worse and that his point was legitimate, that trying to cancel all the people that disagree with you, that's what Tim Robbins said that I covered in my other video on my other channel, is way worse than any of this, right? Any of these things. It's way worse than this stuff with Tucker Carlson and his guest, because this is worse. This is way worse, right? That was Tucker Carlson's point, and they proved him right by making two goofy headlines instead of going, all right, this is bad. We got to cover this. No matter how we feel about Tucker Carlson, he had made a legitimate point here, and these MNFers need to be, buried. We need to put Balenciaga at the frickin' ground. We need to hold them down and stomp them out of existence, in terms of their corporate existence, right? We need to, whatever was done to Kanye West losing $1 billion, we need to freeze their accounts. We need to ban them as a society. Balenciaga ceased to exist as a company. This is something that you've crossed the line here that you just needs to be buried, right? You're done. You no longer exist in terms of there's no place for you in our society. But they're doing that to people who disagree with the official story. They try to do this with Kyrie Irving and Kanye and, what they're trying to do with Tucker Carlson and people in the truth community. But they don't don't care about Balenciaga or kids. They don't want, because they never want to admit that they're wrong and that the other side has a point of view that's legitimate, right? So I just added this because somebody sent me I see it's now on New York Post, right? This is now a New York Post story. They're right wing, they're covering this now. But these are bondage outfits, and they put it, and everyone knows it, and they're going to get away with it because it's Balenciaga, and they'll continue on, right? Because the left-wing Hollywood celebrities say they care about people, but they really don't, right? They don't care. They're just shells of human beings. Anyways, let's get back to my original video here. There's been some developments. Today's Thanksgiving. I'm doing editing. I'm doing the final editing on this thing. I woke up a little bit of headache today. I'm definitely better, but I need to take a nap. I slept so late yesterday, I didn't go to sleep till 2 or 3, and whatever. Just in terms of, you get better, but never it's not it lingers. That's the problem with COVID, as opposed to the flu. Here it is. Kim Kardashian, Bella Hadid slammed for silence on disturbing Balenciaga campaign. This is from the New York Post. So, this is, it's not being covered by the media, but it's definitely an internet thing. And, when I first thought about the people that would buy Balenciaga, I know nothing about it. I've heard, I have almost no information about this creepy, my wife and I were talking about it, and she said that she thought it was like that new thing that was pushed by, one of the original ghouls, Celine Dion, with the creepy stuff for the kids, right? This is high-end fashion and crap, and, they're doing some of these teddy bears now for kids, right? And when I first thought about it, I thought about the Kardashians. This is a kind of, and I think I said that already in the video when I haven't edited that part yet. But that's, who I thought about, people like that. And they don't care because they have no moral compass, right? And they do, they have creepy stuff and they're creepy and, and they're around creepy people. And so, they just don't want you to know about it and have a problem with it. So, and then of course, like these Hadids, I don't know much about them, but that, and apparently she had a Balenciaga campaign and she deleted some of the Balenciaga campaign stuff. So she caved a little bit, but again, not coming out and saying like, this is we want an explanation for why you would do something so creepy. But then my wife sent me this, and this has to do with grooming. And I got a big thing here to do about JoJo Magoo that I did yesterday. And then, some creepy stuff with his granddaughter that just came up. And so she's given the Illuminati eye here. And she posted grooming. I thought that somebody else might have put grooming, but here, this is a OK Magazine says it's her. That's her post. And then I looked at her Instagram page, and she's such a ghoul. But there was this Balenciaga bag. And apparently she received a lot of online hate. And says here, it's heartbreaking to see all the hate in the comments. I guess this is about, I don't know what this is about. But she posted this Balenciaga bag. Like she's endorsing them or whatever this is. I don't even know, And just how creepy it is, right? She's being creepy. And is that an actual, is that their, what is that thing? Like that's an actual purse that they sell? It's probably, is that caution tape? It almost looks like caution tape wrapped around a bag. And let me see, I'll search for it here. So I searched for it, and here it is, Balenciaga caution tape bag. It's an actual bag. It's a part of Kim Kardashian putting up caution tape here. Let me just do the images. And so there's their bag. It's $3,000 for that piece of crap. And here's Kim Kardashian all in caution tape, and then putting that up there. That's their bag, right? Like that's their actual, just creepy. And then people here is that Lizzo getting wrapped in caution tape, and then just all of it. And so that's their creepy bag. And so Madonna should come out, but she won't. She's actually endorsing this thing here. This, with this Balenciaga caution tape bag. And so, because they don't care. They have no moral compass. They think this is a good thing. Okay, so first of all, they issued an apology here. Let me read this thing first here. They said, we sincerely apologize for any offense our holiday campaign may have caused. Again, that we're offended, right? Like, not that it's offensive, but, well, if it offended you, we're sorry. No, it's offensive. Our plush bear bags should not have been featured. Our plush bear bags? Is that what you're calling them? Those S&M bags, right? Should not have been featured with children in this campaign. Yeah, you were wrong. But you did it, and you knew it was wrong when you did it. We have immediately removed the campaign from all of our platforms. Now, this is a kind of fake apology they wanted from Kyrie Irving. Some lawyered up fake apology. It's a real apology, but it's not sincere. Because if you were a good person, if they were good people, you would never have done this in the first place. No person in their right mind would give S&M bags to kids. And this will be good enough for them. That's all they had to suffer through, a fake apology. That's all they had to do, right? They didn't have to do anything else. They're not going to lose any celebrity endorsements. They're not going to be fined. They're not going to have to go into any programming center like Kyrie Irving. They're not going to have to get the blessing of the ADL. All of these things, right? They're set now. And they got more name recognition. Because I don't know one person, I don't think I've met any person in my life that would spend $3,000 on a pocketbook that's probably not all that functional. Like, sucks in terms of a pocketbook. Like, I don't know. I have no ability to understand that, right? But it looks like it's small, right? And it's, and it's covered in caution tape. Like, who would spend that much money? Or on one of these S&M bags? Who would carry their like wallet in there? What woman would use one of these bags? Not any women I've ever met. At least when I knew them, right? I don't know one person that would ever consider buying one of these items. These are for the rich elite, the Kardashian, type of people, right? Dumb, rich elite. Fashion. This is the fashion industry. And so they've gotten this thing out there. They're not pulling these items. They're not, removing this campaign. They got all this publicity from it. And people aren't going to attack them because they're Balenciaga or whatever they are, right? Balenciaga, whatever it's called. And, I probably been mispronouncing it the whole time. Like, they've got name recognition. And, the kind of effects that are, when you introduce sexual content to a child, if you introduce any kind of adult level, concepts to children before they're ready to handle them, it's going to have an effect, especially any kind of sexual material. It's going to be different for each kid, but the effects are always going to be negative. And, it's something they have to survive. And this is a form of sexual abuse. And it is, it is really creepy. And with all the cancel culture that's being exhibited, they're going to get away with this because they gave their lawyered up fake apology. And they owned it. But, Kyrie Irving said, I didn't do anything wrong. And so he had to go through extensive training. He lost, God knows how many millions of dollars, right? I mean, right now it's 10 plus the vaccine is another 17 plus his contract is $250 million. Kanye, $2 billion. He's what used to be a billionaire. And, they said some things. Kanye's was a little bit, more offensive. But nothing they said was as bad as what they're doing to kids here. Balenciaga. And, and Kyrie really, to me, didn't do anything wrong. But, I've covered this extensively on my other channel. But Balenciaga is going to walk away scot-free on this thing. Let's move to JoJo Magoo. Now, I made this voiceover yesterday, but I wanted to talk about how one of the reasons that the left never admits they're wrong is that they don't want to admit that JoJo Magoo is a pedo, right? One of the other reasons, I need to stick this in here somewhere. I'm doing an audio thing here on my, whatever, it's not important. But one of the reasons is that they don't want to admit JoJo Magoo is a predator, right? They want to make him so much better than Trump, right? But I've said this before. There was grooming in what JoJo Magoo did when he set up these kids. And I have a whole video called JoJo Magoo Gets Caught Snoozling Again. If you haven't, you can check that video out. And I go into a little bit of this here. This is a different thing. I'm going to talk about grooming here. But he groomed these kids. What it was is it's a Senate swearing in, event, ceremony. And, it's an event where JoJo Magoo scoped it out as a predator and realized he could fondle all of these kids because he's the president of the Senate, and it's a day of celebration. These families are coming often sometimes from red states or, liberal, they're Democrats from, someplace like Colorado, far away from Washington, D.C. And they're going to the nation's capital. And, I'm not a patriot, and I don't think much of the nation's capital or, I don't think much of the politics or whatever, the history. But I love Washington, D.C. It's definitely gross spiritually, but it's a cool place, right? And, you get into the history, you get into some of the greatness of America, like some of the uniqueness, some of the beauty of our system, and some of the, groundbreaking stuff. As corrupt as it is, there's some good ideals in it, and there's just a beautiful thing they've done there, right? And, when you go there as a kid, it's, it's an important event. You're just open to it. And all these kids, grandkids, kids are going to this swearing-in ceremony, and JoJo Magoo's there. And they're, maybe nervous, they don't know what to do, and he's the guy who's, in charge of steering everybody in the right direction. He knows where the cameras are. He's pointing up to the cameras and saying, look up there, come over here, you guys sit here, let's get a photo shoot here, you know. He's directing traffic. And it's a big day. And the kids are going to be oblivious to it, and their parents don't want to speak up and say, you're a predator, get away from my grandchild. They just, you know, it's hard for them to do, and they're not even thinking about that, right? And there's a point where Jojo Magoo wants to take a picture with one girl specifically, and you'll see it. I'll put it in this. I'm going to clip some of my, you know, I've done this on several videos, and I've talked about this. So he's grooming them. He's groomed the situation. He's set it up to where he can get away with a sexual offense, which is called frottage, right? Frottage. Here, let me find a definition. The practice of touching or rubbing against the cloth body of another person in a crowd as a means of obtaining sexual gratification. It's like some homeless creep or some, you know, derelict on the subway who goes next to a woman and starts grinding on her or just rubs his, you know, so it could be, you know, elbow to elbow. People who get off on physical contact with other people that's not, it's not consensual, right? And their energy is there. Like, you know, if you've experienced this, the energy is there, right? These kids at these treatment centers would come and like touch you or whatever, right? Or they would try to touch you. There's a no touching policy because they all got into this. They would try to get into restraints, you know, where restraints are where their staff would have to hold them down physically, and they would get off on that, right? Because they have this, you know, it's a perversion of their you know, sexual whatever it is, right? And so what Magoo is doing when he sniffs and snoozling is frottage, and it's a felony, right? Frottage is a felony, and it's considered a sexual offense. And so what he's doing here with these kids, he's groomed him, and it is something where, you know, it's a harder thing to prove, but it is, you know, especially with children, he's doing that, right? So he set this thing up. He picks an event where he's the power. He's the president of the Senate. And it's a celebration day, and everybody's happy. Grandpa or grandma just got into the Senate, or, you know, daddy or mommy just made it into the Senate. And he uses this opportunity to glom on all these mostly young girls and touch them in various places. One girl came forward and said, you know, he pinched her nipple, right? Pinched her, you know, when she was a kid, and now she's an adult. She's like, yeah, it was pretty creepy, right? And so he set this up. It's a form of grooming. And they don't want to admit to this. Like, it's much easier to ban people or try to silence them. And, you know, a video like this that talks about it, or anything that goes against the official story, than admit that Jojo Magoo is a creepy MNFer and they voted him into office because they hate Trump so much. Like, they won't admit they're wrong. They can't psychologically go there. They can't psychologically accept that that's the reality. But he did it, right? You can see it in those videos. They're up on, you know, the whole videos are up on, whatever that is, C-SPAN. And it's the swearing-in ceremonies for 2015 and 16 at the end of his, you know, tenure there. And he had scoped things out by then. I don't know. I didn't look at the earlier years. But, you know, he's kissing, snoozling, groping these young women and children. And he does it throughout the process. He set it up. He groomed the situation. And he acted. And it was a stepping stone. Like, he could pursue, you know, more stuff on a more private level, right? If he could set it up where he could get the kids alone, that would be the future, you know, grooming on his part, right? He's not part of the LGBTQ. You know, he's a predator. And so, you know, but the left doesn't want to make this, you know, they can't handle that. You know, and this is, I work professionally. I know stuff, right? Like, people know I know stuff, like you guys know. Like, I can see stuff. And I'm not making this up because I'm a right-wing person that hates Magoo. And I worked in this field, and I saw what he did. And he's got a problem. He's got a problem with, you know, weird touching of kids. And it's not because, you know, he's set it up. Part of the grooming process is, no, I'm just being affectionate. You know, remember, I show you in that video, Whoopi Goldberg, if you guys want to, you know, why, if you haven't seen that video. Jojo Magoo is snoozling again. And I show you Whoopi Goldberg saying he's just being really familiar. It's, you know, an old person being familiar, right? You know, they were just making excuses for him. You know, this is, you know, and I'm not sure if I think I put in that video. I don't know. They all blend together. But Whoopi Goldberg said that. They excused it because they ran this scam where they had a New Mexico politician who JoJo Magoo sniffed her hair, and then JoJo Magoo gave a fake apology, and they got out in front of this, even though CNN had documented him. This guy, Ash Carter, who just recently died, he was all over Ash Carter's wife. And they got cover for all that stuff, right? That this guy doesn't have a problem. Instead of, you know, realizing this guy's a predator and why would we want him anywhere near the White House, they said, all right, this is the best guy to defeat Trump. And these creepy, you know, all these people who are involved in it, all these publications, everyone who's involved is complicit in this, right? Putting this creepy MNFer in the White House. And not that Trump isn't a creep, because he's, you know, he's cheated on his wives and he's been creepy with all these. I mean, he said things, right? Grab him by the beep, right? So, you know, I mean, it's not that Trump isn't creepy. JoJo Magoo is just worse. And the left can never come to terms with that, right? It can never come to terms with how, you know, creepy he is. So this is JoJo Magoo with his granddaughter. We saw her TikTok video about this. And the thumbnail, which comes at the end, the thumbnail they use, which we'll show you in a second, is really creepy.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. First time voter. Here you go.
Wait. Okay, so she just, you know, puts this sticker I voted on. And instead of doing it or having somebody else do it, now JoJo Magoo's going, now wait. This is my big moment. This isn't, you know, him being creepy.
Wait. Which side do you want on?
This side.
All right.
Now, look at where his hand is. This was their thumbnail, right? This is their thumbnail. Look at where his hand is. Of course, we know, look at him, look at her. He's just so creepy. And we know that his daughter claimed that when she was a teenager, they used to shower together in a diary, and that's never been addressed. Look, his hand's right there, right? He's staring at her.
Yeah.
And then just, you know, giving some glommy, you know, JoJo Magoo pedo kiss.
First vote.
And boom, that's just, you know. Yeah, let's just move on. Okay, so I got this video done by Thanksgiving, but it was copyrighted twice because I took a cartoon video from FIFA. They have this stupid mascot video. I've uploaded it twice, and they copyrighted it both times. I used almost nothing the second time. But I'll just show you some images, and I'll explain what this is about. So, you know, they have this FIFA World Cup soccer tournament in Qatar. Is very controversial, a lot of rules or whatever's going on there. But they have mascots at all these things, right? You know, the Olympics and the World Cup, they have these ceremonies, and it's very, you know, occultish. And so there's this ghost, like this mascot, forget what his name is, right? But it's you know, it's some sort of Arab name. And the ghost takes a famous singer, Qatarian singer, on a trip through time portals and claims that mascots have been there inspiring and guiding humanity. It's more like, you know, jinn or ghosts, you know, some sort of, I don't know, whatever it is, cultish powers, and have been guiding humanity. And they've created this other multiverse out of human ideals and things like this, where all the mascots go to retire. Weird thing, right? And then talks about how they were in charge of Bigfoot and Area 51 and aliens, and they inspired Newton's idea of the apple, all these things, right? You know, mascots are these creepy, you know, like they're like clowns, right? But they're worse because they appeal to kids. Like people dressing up, these adult creeps, right? Some, you know, some pedo dresses up. That's Goofy, and a kid runs up and hugs Goofy, and it's really some creepy pedo in a Goofy suit, right? Or, you know, oh, it's Mickey Mouse. So, like, you know, Kid runs up to Mickey Mouse and, no, it's a 2-time felon, right? Some carny, And so it's always, it's not a, it's a deception and a weird thing. Like, the mascots have always been like some kind of an odd aspect, some, marketing tool, but also this other creepy thing. You can look for the video yourself, and they have a figure 8 as their, like an infinity type of, anyways, there's just this whole thing on portals. So let's go to Jojo Magoo and the turkey. This stupid thing where they pardon a turkey, right? If killing turkeys was bad, then it sucks. It's a whole, and this is not Jojo Magoo. This is all presidents. But this happened.
Now, this is chocolate, right? Chocolate, you are pardoned. You are pardoned. He said, you had to tell me that?
You're not going to be killed, Woo.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, I'm serious. He said, I don't know, man. You didn't have to pardon me. I knew I was pardoned.
Did our president just say the turkey said to him, you didn't have to pardon me, I knew I was pardoned? Is that the leader of the free world talking to turkeys?
At any rate, thank you both very, very much.
So before that, though, these guys come up here.
Yes. I hereby pardon chocolate and chip. Which one's chocolate?
Chocolate and chip. Piece of ice cream.
Chocolate, you're pardoned, and so are you, Chip. Chip says, I know, I don't even have to be told.
But this is the best part here.
He said, I don't know, man. You didn't have to pardon me. I knew I was pardoned. At any rate, thank you both very, very much. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. How many turkeys you got down there? You raising?
Surplus range grows about 9.5 million.
God love you. 9.5 million turkeys. I tell you what, that's like some of the countries I've been to. Anyway.
What does that mean? What does that mean, Alzheimer's? Like, what are you talking about? What does that mean, some of the countries? 9 million turkeys is just like some of the countries you've been to? You're calling those turkeys population turkeys, or you're referring to their leadership, or what does that mean? What was that? He's got his Crypt Keeper mullet going on there, just a mess. What does that even mean? Listen to this, MF, right?
9.5 million turkeys. I tell you what, that's like some of the countries I've been to. Anyway, do you want to talk? Yeah. Look, folks.
What do you think was going to happen? So you think this is a cartoon? You think this dumb, these aren't real turkeys. These aren't wild turkeys. They're bred in a way, we raised meat birds one time, meat chickens. We used to hatch out chicks. We had a couple of broody hens that would raise chicks on my first attempt at a homestead, right? And one time we were at, Tractor Supply, one of those stores, and they had meat birds for sale, baby chicks, and we got some other chicks, and we raised them, right? And the meat birds outgrew the egg-laying hens. They were like 4 times the size within a couple of weeks. I mean, it's hard to even really, you should see pictures of them. And they were pink, and they really didn't have very many feathers, and their muscles were just bulging out. Now, they're not genetically modified, but they're hybrids, and they're bred in such a way, and they're fed whatever they're fed. They look like they're on steroids. And we got like 4 or 5 meat birds, and 2 of them died because they couldn't, their organs don't grow fast enough to handle the weight load of their muscles, and they couldn't walk. Like the egg-laying birds, which were more natural and more, like organic chickens, they were learning to hop and fly and scratch and function as chickens. And these big, meat, farm-raised meat birds, they could barely sit. Like they could barely stand. They were like constantly falling over. They were out of balance, and they looked like they were like on steroids, like I said. And I couldn't believe how much faster they were growing, because they grow real fast and then they get slaughtered. And it's just, what kind of life is that? I mean, I'm not even talking about the getting slaughtered. I'm talking about just the way that they're designed. And this turkey that Jojo Magoo has, I'm surprised he didn't go, I'm Jill's husband, right? Like, he's talking to this turkey. It's one of those types of birds. Like, if you see a wild turkey, they're lean and they can fly and they'll fight you. They're like, people they're chasing people in, where it's New Jersey or Massachusetts, the neighborhoods, right? These wild turkeys are, big, formidable birds. And these farm-raised turkeys that have been bred for meat, I mean, if you ate a wild turkey on Thanksgiving, you would be bummed. It would be gamey. It would be tough. It would be, nothing like what, you're used to. And these are, because of the feed they have and the breeding they have and all these things. And so when you pardon a bird like this, it's already, they don't walk. I mean, I've seen these types of the turkeys. They barely move. I mean, they're, barely functional, right? Because they've been bred just to be food at some point. And they're not like, they're not happy living natural animals, right? It's some sort of genetically farm-raised, abomination, right? And so, I mean, it's hard to watch these things. And these same things with these chickens you eat, right? The amount of muscle mass that they create is, it's not natural. And the birds suffer because of it, right? Because their organs and their bones and everything can't really support that level of muscle mass. But anyways, I got to wrap this thing up. This is just, weird. This is a weird video. Anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.